We were up at Pasadena last night.
Morning. Today is Tuesday, April 30th, 2019. This is a regular meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. I'd like to take a moment of silence for the victims of all hate crimes all over the world. The hate, the rhetoric, and the rhetoric that leads to death and maiming and murder is wrong. And I'd like to take a moment of silence for all of those victims. Okay, we'll proceed. Do we have any commissioner comments on any of the consent agenda items?
May I take the roll call, sir?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Please let the record reflect Commissioners Soboroff, Bonner, Figueroa Villa, and Goldsmith are present, and we have a quorum.
Thanks. Do we have any commissioner comment on any of the consent agenda items this morning? Do we have any public comments on any consent agenda items?
Yes, sir. We have 2 cards on 1A, 2 cards on 1B, 2 cards on 1C.
And that's it?
1 card on 1D, 1E, and 1F.
Okay. I'll move for approval items 1G, H, I, J, K, and L. Do we have a second? Do we have a second? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Let's go to item number 1A.
1A, we have Mr. Herman and Mr. Novick.
Mr. Novick, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, 1A is a request for reimbursement to Chief Moore for $2,169.42 for his personal expenses during the Major Chiefs Association meeting in Washington, D.C. on February 12th through the 14th. I spend about $2,169 a month living here in Los Angeles. I find it kind of outrageous that the chief can blow through $2,169 in 3 days and 2 nights in D.C. at a conference that his travel is already paid for. Probably the food is already paid for. So I think you should deny this request.
Next.
I'm here to deny the request for Major County Sheriffs of America because when I was up there with the posse regarding major cities with Chief Association of the MCCA, yeah, well, in Washington they have better particular standards and they do not report to LA. Incidentally, though, the expenses brought out by the first speaker are politically correct. I'm not in favor. I'm not in support. But I do like the posse from MOHAVE. I believe it's called Mohave County. Mohave County is a beautiful country.
Mr. President, speaker's off topic.
Off topic, last warning.
Then I wish to waive my remaining balance. Fuck T-Bank.
We have no other cards on 1A.
1B.
1B, we have Mr. Herman and Michael Novick.
Did you want to take a vote on 1A, sir?
We already voted. Oh.
No, you didn't.
1A, sir.
Oh, we didn't do vote 1A? Okay, thank you. Motion for approval of 1A? All in favor? Aye. Okay, 1B.
Opposed? 1B is another travel authority to go to another major city chiefs association, FBI National Executive Institute Associates, and the Police Executive Research Forum in Miami Beach. So it doesn't talk about the monetary involvement in that, but I think we can anticipate another couple of $3,000 that could pay for somebody's living expenses for a month in Los Angeles. I object to participation in the Major Cities Chiefs Association. The Major City Chiefs Association is responsible for the view of so-called community-oriented policing, or COPS, as the civilian equivalent of psychological operations in the military. It's about propaganda and controlling the thinking of the people or the enemy. It defines certain people as the enemy. And so I think that you should reject the authorization for the chief to travel there. I think that involving the LAPD with the FBI is detrimental to the people of Los Angeles. And we've seen FBI criminality, including right here in Los Angeles, with the use of the LAPD and task forces against, in fact, the creation of SWAT related to a joint FBI operations under COINTELPRO to destroy the Black Panther Party here and others. So I think that this is an unconscionable use of government funds and an improper authorization by the board. I urge you to reject the department's report and reject the travel authority for Chief Moore to attend that meeting. And I think he should pay for it himself if he goes.
Thank you.
Mr. Herman, please.
Well, as you already know, we, the people, object to the travel authority of Chief Police Michael R. Moore to attend the 2019 Major City Association, known as MCCCA, for the FBI Executive Association, because the police executive know we not support this BPC number 19-0114, Beach, Florida. No way, we're gonna take an action to approve, because we, the people, are the legislative report. Fuck the police.
We have no other comment cards on this item.
Motion for approval 1B. Second, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? 1C.
We have 4 cards on 1C. We have Mr. Novick, Mr. Herman, Adam Smith, and Gina Viola.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to object not only to this monetary donation, but to the deceptive way in which it's presented. If you look at the supported documents that you have for item 1C, it's described there as the acceptance of a monetary donation for the Metropolitan Task Force on Violent Gangs, FBI Task Force. That information is buried at the very bottom. This one describes it as the department's report, approve the department's report relative to a monetary donation to pay for improvements to a building. You don't get to the, you bury the lead. The lead on this is that you're again promoting and encouraging the idea that there's a plague of violent gangs in Los Angeles and a rise in violent gang crime, and you're trying to promote hysteria in the city to justify constant increases in funding for the police, constant interference of the police, and trying to pervert peaceful sentiments and gang truces that are being built to try to somehow roll those into the idea that the people of Los Angeles are threatened and the police are a thin blue line protecting us. And I think that that's not correct. So I urge you to reject the monetary donation of $18,865 from the Police Foundation. And I think that you should not be improving any buildings or, in fact, carrying out a task force on violent crime, particularly because this is an FBI task force. And again, the FBI's role in local policing around the country has been to militarize it and to incorporate local police forces in counterinsurgency operations designed to control and disorient communities around the country, including here in Los Angeles. So I think that you should, at the very minimum, strike this from your agenda because it's deceptively presented. And if you are going to vote on it, I think you should vote no.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Herman?
Good morning, Mr. Soberoff. Good morning, Mr. Tefank. Good morning, Mr. Bonner. Sorry, Miss Decker's not here. Who's down there? Sharon, good morning. And anyway, let me proceed. We're asking for monetary donation for objection for this $18,000 because it will not benefit the Metropolitan Police Department because they themselves don't know what the hell they're doing. They cannot collaborate with Metro Police, the sheriff. Everyone's offset. There needs to be a standard set to follow the rules of engagement. So when you talk about using force on violent gangs, there's no gangs in LA. There's never been gangs in LA. That's barrio homies. That's barrio homies. We grew up together, whether we're black or brown or white or
Off topic,
Asian.
last warning.
Well, what is a gang? Can you give me the definition, Mr. Sobroff, what a gang is? Can you please describe what a gang? Because
That's the
FBI is
end
not
of
a
your time on
gang.
this one. Next speaker, please.
The FBI is not a
Next
gang.
speaker
Mr.
is Adam
Sobroff.
Smith.
The FBI is. I got 37 seconds, Mr.
No, you
Love,
don't.
and we're talking
So
about the
now I'm gonna
FBI
give you a
that's
warning of
investigating
disrupting
the
the
city
meeting.
of Los Angeles, and you know better.
And now I'm gonna
And
ask
you
you to
know
leave the
better. Oh,
meeting.
you know what, Mr.
You
Love?
can leave the
Fuck
meeting.
you and your faggot son.
Okay, you can leave.
Adam Smith, please.
Mr.
Good
Smith.
morning. I'm unclear as to how much weight the mayor polls in the city when he asked a couple of months ago for like a slowdown of Metro division.
No, I asked for you to leave the
Hey,
meeting.
I'm speaking right now. Can you pause my time then, Chief?
We're stopping your time.
Mr. Sobroff, I'm going to sit down and pick up my shit.
Go ahead.
You asked me to leave.
Go ahead.
So don't fuck with us. You racist motherfucker. About treating people in the public like good people. Trying to get fucking shit. Fucking retard with this.
Mr. President, for the record, Mr. Herman is delaying the start of the meeting.
I'm picking up my shit, Chief.
Mr. Herman, leave the
Continues to
room.
disrupt the meeting and delay it from moving forward.
Leave the room.
He continues to disrupt the meeting as he's leaving the room.
Okay, go ahead.
Hey, good morning, Hamid. Anyway, so if the mayor wants to slow down Metro Division, but you keep approving donations, and I think the chief said recently in an article that the stops haven't slowed, and I'm just wondering how that works. But specifically for this donation, any of the commissioners that we're supposed to believe are acting in good faith, Mr. Bonner, should at least question. I feel like these donations should be a little bit more itemized than, building maintenance. Like, what does $19,000 going to a building actually mean? I think at best you should know what it's actually being used for, if not the rest of us. I could think of, what the police could say is a building improvement and what they could actually use $19,000 for. That's just being blindly approved in about 40 seconds by this commission. So if y'all are going to keep accepting these donations from the Police Foundation, I think there should be a better accounting of what they're actually getting used for.
Two minutes and 40 seconds. Yeah, I'd like to echo what Adam talked about the mayor asking for a metro slowdown, and I too don't understand how this reflects that. $19,000 in building improvements, to me, why do you need a donation for that when you already have 54% of the city's operating budget? It feels really irresponsible to be taking donations on that. Also, Metro, what I've learned about Metro, I've learned here. And I've learned coming here for 2 years regularly. And also starting to read several books, reading articles, reading research papers. I'm not just listening to talking points on news or even in the newspapers, although I do read those as well. And what I've learned about Metro is it's horribly racist. It's horribly violent. There shouldn't be any more money going to Metro at all. Thank goodness for Stop LAPD Spying, exposing all of the data-driven technologies that Metro uses and what that's amounted to for the city and criminalizing those neighborhoods. And it's really irresponsible for you to take any donation towards that department, let alone one of this size. So again, just echoing, even the mayor has called for you to slow down on Metro. So it would be really irresponsible when I sit down to turn around and hear you all unanimously vote for this. I know exactly where you stand. Also, in a lot of my research and reading, again, not just listening to talking points on TV, do you know what percentage of gang members actually commit violent crime? Because I bet you don't know that it's 3%. 3%. But what you put out in the you're shaking your head, so you do know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what's put out in the news leads everyone to believe that gang members are out shooting up the city left and right. And that's why we need police there. So you need to stop spinning it that way. Less than 3% of gang members are violent.
Next speaker.
We have no other speakers on this item, sir.
Okay, we have motion for approval on item number 1C, please. I'll move. Second. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Item number 1D.
We have Mr. Novick, Michael Novick, and Adam Smith.
Yeah, I want to object strenuously to the nature of today's agenda and this item in particular. You're burying policy decisions inside consent decree items that look like they're just about small monetary donations. This particular one, which is described in the support document as a non-monetary donation, but it is monetary, it's $15,000 from the Police Foundation to cover expenses associated with the 2019 Crime Fighters Leadership Conference. It doesn't say what that is here, but in the report that back it up, it talks about the fact that the leadership conference is involved with the police, incorporating among their ranks for this meeting civic leaders and political leaders to carry out crime fighting. I think that's an inappropriate and the wrong direction. I think that the police should be under the guidance and direction of the civic elected political leadership of the city, not the other way around. And I think that in particular, that this is trying to promote, it says data-driven crime reduction, which we've spent weeks here discussing and you've pulled the plug on. But now you're coming right back the next week under the so-called consent agenda items, putting $15,000 for the police to issue propaganda and promote the incorporation of the civic leadership and the political leadership of the city in data-driven crime reduction. So this is bullshit, and it's secretive, it's manipulative, it's deceptive, and it has to stop. You can't carry out policies contrary to the ones you claim you're creating by putting them and disguising them as so-called consent decree items. Your entire agenda is always a consent item because you always consent to what Chief Moore wants and what the LAPD union wants and what the people who run the city want, which is aggressive, suppressive policing to control the population of Los Angeles.
Next speaker.
Adam Smith.
Good morning. I wanted to pull up the agenda. I lost it.
It's 1D.
Thanks, Chief. I guess I just came up again to obviously say that this donation shouldn't be approved. We were up in Sacramento last week, so I missed all of your lovely faces advocating for AB 392. And the police unions have a counter bill, SB 230, which got stripped of pretty much everything except for money for training. And I noticed that this $15,000 is about training in the areas of crime trends, community surveys, data-driven crime reduction, body-worn video, and technology updates. I just think that it's clear that training, all the money that this department throws at training doesn't do anything. I don't think that they should have cameras or anything like that because they get used for surveillance, but I think of Valerie Rivera and when Eric was murdered on June 6, 2017, magically the in-car video system wasn't activated on the car that killed him and then eventually ran over him. And so we see this money, all this money getting, donated to training, and this is venue and food, but it's all to support all of this training that's supposed to make us feel better about the way that the police are showing up in communities where real live human beings like Eric and like Omar are being killed. So you should, say fuck this donation too, Mr. Bonner.
Is that it on 1D?
Yes, sir.
Okay, motion for approval of 1D.
No, that was.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, let's go to item number 1E.
We have Michael Novick.
Okay. And then, is that it, or is there F?
We have
I'm sorry.
item number 2.
Then we go to, that's the
We had
last.
F, but it was Mr. Herman.
Okay, so we have a motion for approval of item F, 1F. So, second. All in favor? Anyone opposed? And then had we already done G through the rest?
Yeah.
G through the rest, yes, sir.
Okay, so this will be the last one on the consent agenda items. This is number 1E. Mr.
Correct.
Novick.
Yeah, this is a very small grant, $477 for electronic equipment for the Commercial Crimes Division. I'm actually want to speak in favor of this one. I think that the LAPD should devote much more of its efforts to fighting commercial crime. I think that's the predominant crime in the city of Los Angeles is commercial crime. I think that they should be investigating the realtors and developers. I think they should be investigating the role that the realtors and developers play in corrupting the city government, city council. I think they should be investigating the commercial crime and land theft and rent gouging and wage theft that goes on in the city on a daily basis. Those are the major crimes that are happening in the city of Los Angeles, not the street crime that you try to stigmatize and criminalize people about. So these are the big crimes. I'm sorry it's only $477. I think you should be spending $477,000 on fighting commercial crime in the city of Los Angeles, because that's the crime that runs the city. That's the crime that runs the construction industry, the development, the land deals, the slumlords, the rent gouging, the banks. And so I hope you accept this donation, and I hope that they use that electronic equipment to do some surveillance on the suites, not the streets, on the people running the city and making big money out of doing it.
We have no other cards on this item.
Motion for approval of item number 1E. Second, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, let's go to the report of the chief. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. When we first deal or talk about significant events that's happened this last week, when you speak about some public appearances as well as an officer-involved shooting that we don't believe involved a hit. First of all, to the community engagement and outreach. On this last week, I met with Skip Townsend. He's the executive director of Second Call. This was a follow-up meeting. One initial one had to be postponed given the Nipsey Hussle vigil and funeral services. That was actually the day we scheduled a call. The outreach with Mr. Townsend has been to have an ongoing conversation relative to the recent increase in gang shootings that has happened, particularly in the 77th Southwest, Southeast area of Los Angeles. And meeting with him was to understand the ongoing efforts that his organization has had, important work in attempts to lower the tension between rival gang sets that we've seen manifested in some recent shooting activities. I've been encouraged by his report and his information that there have been, particularly in the aftermath of the unfortunate death of Mr. Hussle, a number of gang sets that have spoken about the criticality of coming together and resolving differences and finding a way to avoid shooting violence particularly. His efforts, however, continue that not all of the communities and work of his outreach teams are finding that success or finding that receptiveness. And we spoke about some strategies relative to what LAPD can do to help augment and provide for the safety in those communities, and at the same time facilitate, however possible, his efforts, as well as the faith community and the larger community themselves, in trying to lower the tension and the resulting violence that we're seeing. Additionally, this past week we had the Peace Over Violence press conference involving Denim Day. That was I believe it was the 20th anniversary of that day of remembrance and demonstration and resolve. I was happy to be a member of that press conference to talk about LAPD's work and to support that there is no excuse and never an invitation to commit harassment or sexual assault or rape that by the conduct of a person by the clothing that they wear. As a walk down memory lane, this came from Patty Giggins from Peace Over Violence. That she was inspired by an actions of Italy's Supreme Court, a justice that dismissed a case of rape involving a young woman because, and his stated purpose for a rationale for it was because the jeans that she wore was so tight that she must have consented to remove them as some justification outlandish of the allegations of this assault. So we have seen in the past 20 years significant work with Peace Over Violence as well as other sexual assault victim advocates in improving the department's investigations, the advocacy for our victims, to ensure that this level of services provided not just in the investigation but in supportive care after the assault, these horrific assaults is part of a healing process, and that was an opportunity to stand yet again and to show the unification. Sexual assaults in Los Angeles continue to be down significantly. However, we also know that this is one of the most underreported crimes in our society, and giving a voice to sexual assault victims from every community is important, and one that I want to state as critical to us. Additionally, this past weekend we saw significant arrests that I participated in a press conference yesterday with the U.S. Attorney as well as the counterterrorism chief for the FBI and the chief of Long Beach and a number of others. And this involved the arrest of an individual from the San Fernando Valley whose last name was Domingo. He was an individual who came onto the radar screen, if you will, because of his online posts involving a number of chat rooms where he espoused extreme violence and a threat to people of all walks, as well as churches, Jews, as well as police officers and others. And in that initiation of those conversations drew the attention of our Joint Terrorism Task Force resources, and which resulted in a 2-month-long investigation in working alongside the U.S. Attorney's Office, and culminated in his arrest Friday night relative to his plot to go and initiate an attack at a public gathering in the Long Beach area on Sunday. His plan was to take a number of improvised explosive devices. They basically were rice cookers that he thought had been constructed to be bombs, and to plant those in anticipation of that meeting, and to ensure the assault was to kill as many people as possible.
Excuse me. Yes. We let the chief speak. You'll get a chance to speak, and I promise he won't interrupt you. Okay? Okay. This is your last warning. Please stop disrupting the meeting. Go ahead, Chief.
So the nature of the charges against the individual were well documented in his complaint that is available online and also via a number of media outlets. These are allegations, serious ones, that he will face a criminal justice system for. My remarks yesterday, I'll go to not so much the enormity of what his attack posed as a risk, but the importance that our communities continue to recognize that threats such as this are real. This past Saturday in Poway, California, with a 19-year-old man who attacked viciously a synagogue on the last day of the Passover, killing an individual, and thankfully by actions there of others that were going to counter his violence, as well as the good fortune of it at this early stage of his weapon malfunctioning, the casualty count there could have been much higher. The individual that was arrested Friday night in the Reseda area referenced the attacks in Christchurch, New Zealand as a motivation for his hatred, as well as other events. And so these allegations are significant and real, and I would just stress that while the department will continue to work with all of our state and local and federal partners as a means of investigating and trying to interrupt and disrupt these types of plots that occur, what is really also critical is that our communities, all of our communities, recognize that individuals amongst us may find some irrational manner of justifying such acts, and that bringing them to our attention is critical for us to safeguard our communities. The last matter I'd like to address is an officer-involved shooting that happened on Friday, the 26th, approximately just before 11 o'clock in the morning at the 10100 block of South Vermont, just outside the city near the southeast area. On that day, an off-duty sergeant was seated outside a car wash while he waited for his car to be washed at the corner of 102nd and Vermont, and he heard a loud, indistinguishable noises emitting from the car wash area, the cashier office area. Shortly thereafter, an individual exited the office and was apparently armed with a handgun. The sergeant identified himself as a police officer and ordered the individual to stop. The individual pointed a handgun at the officer and fired one round, resulting in an officer-involved shooting. The suspect fled the location and has, to this point, remained unidentified. It was determined later that a car wash employee inside that office had been murdered. The sergeant was not injured during this incident. Force Investigation Division responded. They're handling the administrative portion of this investigation, while the LA County Sheriff's Department responded, and they're handling the homicide investigation. The suspect that's outstanding on that is a male Hispanic, approximately 20, 25 years of age, and members of the Inspector General's office, as well as the DA's rollout team, were on scene. Moving over to our crime picture, this past week we saw very minor improvements on some of our crime, particularly in the gang-related area. We saw a slight decrease in the overall rate of increase. Where we're at today is at 79 homicides this year versus 80 last year. We have 407 fewer violent crimes, and which is a slight improvement from last week's numbers. We have an overall reduction of 7% for our property crime and violent crime, which is 2,915 fewer crimes. We are still dealing with this increase in shooting victims year to date, but it has somewhat leveled off this last week. We saw some improvement there. For the year, we have 66 additional shooting victims versus the same period last year. That's a 26% increase.
Chief, the homicide number that you gave, do you know what percentage of those or what number of those were gang-related and not gang-related?
At this point, we're showing our gang-related homicides this year as of the end of the 27th of April as 39.
39 of 66?
Of the 66. So last year, homicide victims or gang-related homicides accounted for approximately 60%, I believe, of the gang of our total homicides. And our shooting victims, they typically our normal typical number is about 70% of our shootings are gang-related. As of the 26th of April, we have 222 gang-related shooting victims, which is an increase from 170 the year before. That is nearly a 31% increase. That increase accounts for 52 of the additional 66 shooting victims. So again, there is some lag time in gang-related shootings because investigations have to dig into and what may be a shooting victim at first may not be readily apparent that there's gang involvement. So I just caution that those numbers are have a little flexibility in them because of just what investigations determine as to whether or not they're gang related. As a reminder, gang related crime is in the state of Los Angeles. We rely upon standards and definitions that if the victim or suspect is involved in gangs, then it's a related crime. Whether or not it's gang motivated, meaning that a victim or suspect, the motivation of the crime may be a dispute other than gang membership. But what we talk about and what we generally have framed year after year in Los Angeles is the gang-related portion of it. On our officer-involved shootings, with this last one that I reported just a moment ago, that totals a number of 5 officer-involved shootings this year versus last. That number last year was 11, and our fatal numbers this year are 3 versus 6 was our last year total, which is a 50% reduction. I do want to make a side note that I'm happy to report that the officer who suffered very significant and grievous injury a week ago Saturday, the life-saving actions of the officers on scene, as well as the actions of the hospital in which the officer was transported to, performed some miraculous results. And actually that officer was able to be discharged this past week, late in the week, and I'm hopeful that he's going to see a full recovery. The other matter I want to talk about quickly is traffic. And traffic stats, we're seeing some challenges in the DUI and hit and run related collisions involving serious injuries and deaths. The numbers are still small, but year to date we have seen 28 DUI related collisions involving a serious injury or death. That number last year was 20. We still have year-to-year reductions from going back the previous years all the way back to 15, but that slight increase there is something that we're taking note of. Our motor vehicle versus PEDs, we've also seen an increase. This year we've had 171 motor vehicles versus pedestrian collisions involving a serious injury or death. Last year that number was 165. Most concerning in that is we've had 45 individuals this year die as a result of a motor vehicle versus pedestrian collision. Last year that number was 38. It speaks to the criticality of distracted driving, distracted walking, that our pedestrians and motoring public need to. That's probably our most pressing matter as to the underlying influences of these collisions. And so getting off of our personal devices and paying attention to our surrounding when they're operating a vehicle or walking about the city is critical. We are taking enforcement actions and centering our enforcement actions on distracted driving and distracted walking, both in pedestrian task forces as well as in vehicle traffic enforcement. But we need the public's help in acting responsibly in that way as well. Moving over to the personnel numbers, we have 10,043 sworn personnel on payroll, 2,986 personnel are civilian deployment, 387 reserve officers, and 1,428 cadets. This Thursday, I will appear along with my senior members of my team for the city's first budget hearing for this next fiscal year, and I look forward to seeing that budget as proposed, which will maintain our sworn staffing and allow us to add some civilian staffing to open up some additional facilities in support of our line operations, which I think will provide for a safer public. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Chief. Do we have any commissioner comments or questions?
Yes.
Chief? Dale? Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chief. Let me work backwards with a couple of questions. One is you answered on the gang data, you answered one question, which was if I understood you correctly, those 39 of the 66 are noted as gang affiliated, which means they don't necessarily reflect whether the homicide was gang motivated. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah. Okay. We use the terms gang related, and then the gang motivated would be as you said.
And is there through subsequent investigation or otherwise ever any determination ultimately as to how many homicides in any given year are gang motivated?
The difficulty in that, we do find a number of homicides person on person where we solve the case. that we can determine that there may be an underlying issue of domestic violence or family violence, may be a dispute that has nothing to do with the gang involvement of any of the parties. The areas that we have difficulty is, for instance, we may have a street robbery where the individual committing the robbery is later identified as a gang member, but did the trappings or the fruits of the crime, the robbery itself, go to further the gang, or were they just simply for the individual involved? That's where the challenges of that go in understanding what's motivated by gangs and what's gang related, which is why we basically pull back to the gang related portion of it, and rather than the more subjective, I think, and difficult answer, which is what's motivated.
And that would be for what you're describing, somewhat understandable reasons for the purpose of capturing data, right? That
Yes.
In terms of staying with the general gang-related. In terms of deploying resources or actually addressing
Yes.
the violence, is there any further distinction between
Yes.
Motivation versus affiliation in that regard?
Absolutely. For instance, most recently, where we've seen the increase in shootings, violence in 77th and Southeast, the tragic death of Mr. Hustle was, the distinctiveness of that was, we believe that was a dispute at this point that involved another individual that was not so much gang-on-gang violence as two individuals that had a dispute. Whereas we've seen other shooting violence occurred this past week where an innocent 10-year-old boy was shot inadvertently, we believe, by two individuals from opposing gangs shooting at each other. So understanding the underlying nature of the violence is critical to us. We had a multi-6 shooting that was gang-related in the northeast portion of Frogtown, Cypress Park on Saturday, that involved gang members that we believe a different gang set came up on and had a dispute. Understanding that is critical to us, to understanding and projecting what can we work with gang interventionists and faith leaders and others to try to interrupt that or stem that from escalating further when there's that type of dispute, versus instances in which there may be a dispute that it's a one-on-one and we should or will not likely anticipate further retaliatory acts. So we have instances, for instance, in Mr. Hustle's death, we wanted information out clearly as to what we thought this was motivating this, and so to dispel rumors and myths that were occurring about what had occurred there, because we do see it as that it can play as a motivator for individuals to go out. In fact, I will say that in talking with Mr. Townsend, it was referenced here by community members, an earlier session about on the night of his vigil and memorial service that we had turned out to be a multi-5 shooting involving a homicide in the southeast area that we believe was gang related. And I made a remark about stopping the senseless violence and the need to do that. Other people looked at that and thought that it was, or interpreted it as me tying that into Mr. Hustle's death, and that somehow his death involved that, which I did not mean, I did not mean for that to be tied in. And what was critical was that recognizing how that was interpreted was that we clarified and it was to talk about that. I've heard the criticism from this room on that and recognize it wasn't, in retrospect, should have been clearer in that. What I was attempting to convey was that the ongoing nature of this violence, as we have factions that are promoting peace, which we want to give air and lift to and give volume to increasing the peace. In the face of that, we still see and we still are challenged by the senseless loss of life, and we've got to continue this pursuit.
And thank you. Coming back to the issue of the effort to understand the nature of the violence, whether it's gang related or affiliated or motivated, is that effort both the effort to seek that understanding and then the effort to act on the understanding? Is that exclusively within specialized units like GED, or is it, how does it translate into the general, broader patrol, or how is that? Where's that center of understanding, so to speak?
Well, it goes to the geographic area first. There is the department's organizational makeup is a concept of territorial imperative. So the areas that are in the 21 areas, such as, let's say, southeast area, is the southeast area captain and the command there make up the bulk of our efforts in policing the southeast area of Los Angeles. Specialized units both within that command and outside that command exist in support of that area CO and in support of the southeast area station. So the understanding of the underlying factors and influencers and drivers of the community safety issues in Southeast is a whole department and effort. Everyone in this organization has to be able to tie back to our purpose of the safety of Southeast as much as the safety of Devonshire or Topanga or any other portion. So this is no one, with rare exception, has the monopoly and the sole responsibility. Where that differs is on matters of extreme classified information or confidential information. For instance, when this investigation involved this individual who was arrested on Friday night, that was an investigation that was well outside of the operational tenor of the rest of the organization for purpose because of the nature of it. Now, once the arrest was made, though, we brought right back in West Valley and the Valley and others that would be impacted by the aftermath of that arrest as to community concerns as well as backlash and other potential repercussions that we might anticipate could occur. So but it all drives back to, at the end of the day, back to the ground and back to the territory of the community in which we work in, and everyone having an understanding. Lastly, to reemphasize this point, in the shooting that we saw involving the Newton officer, a gang officer who was attempting to stop a motorist, and then during that period of time, another individual came and shot that individual, shot our officer, and that officer shot back, and both these individuals were injured. That night and into the following day, Newton Resources, as well as others, worked in those neighborhoods to dispel rumors and to provide information and to have a sense with relationships that had been previously worked and developed through the Community Safety Partnership and youth programming and others to have conversations. So that interrelationship exists throughout the city.
And just I think that I understand, just to tie it down, the main point is that the responsibility rests primarily with the area commander, supported by the specialized units, and
Yes.
not the other way around.
Oh, that's correct.
Right. Okay. Thank you. A couple of questions about the thwarted terrorist attack that we read about. Can you describe just a little more specifically what exactly was the department's role relative to the both the investigation, taking the individual into custody, and what will be the role on ongoing basis relative to supporting any further activity?
So the FBI leads a joint terrorism task force made up of law enforcement leaders, both of state, local, and federal partnerships. And that task force has made up of a number of squads that focus on various aspects of terrorism investigations, domestic terrorism, foreign terrorism, tips and leads that come in from the public from all sources relative to all manners of threats. And that terrorism task force works from a joint regional intelligence center here in the LA Basin, and is charged with the initial investigation of tips and leads and understanding what is within their purview and then conducting active investigations on those. We have membership from LAPD of sworn personnel that are on those task forces, as does the sheriffs, as does Long Beach, and a number of other agencies. In this instance, the monitoring of the posts by this individual on social media chat rooms was done by the FBI and not LAPD. The investigation that sprang from that tip, that lead, we were significantly involved in, and that involvement included up to and including me regular and ongoing briefs as to the investigative status, strategies, what had been learned, and what safeguards and breaker switches were in place to protect the public as they developed an investigative strategy to understand his motivations, the significance of them, whether or not they were real or aspirational, and and as the course of this investigation unfolded, this was one that all of us were critically involved in, from the U.S. Attorney to significant leadership within the FBI and Department of Justice, to myself and others, to culminate where during the course of this 6 to 8 weeks, these investigative efforts and leads led us to believe that he was much more than aspirational, that he was operational, that he was willing and seeking, and despite deterrence or despite discouragement, was looking to commit this attack. His targets varied over the course of recorded interviews. The nature of the surveillance and investigations were not hearsay or matters between people that were not captured for the eventual prosecution. And during that course of that, we were concerned. For instance, a portion of his time was centering on police officers, particularly LAPD officers. It was attacking them. And we knew that he had weapons registered to him that could facilitate that. So he had desire and opportunity and the means in that instance. And that was where our surveillance began with him on a round-the-clock basis as this Joint Terrorism Task Force, because as we developed the larger case, was understanding if he were to go one-off, could he pose an imminent threat immediately. And so that surveillance continued, and ultimately we continued to work with him by introducing human sources, individuals who worked in an undercover capacity, and provided him what he sought, which was materials to fashion and fabricate bombs. And his own actions were to go out and buy, has been reported, materials to help in the construction of those bombs. And on up through and into Friday night and into Saturday, those briefings included me, and my concerns were addressed through the tenor of the investigation, as they have through the days afterwards with follow-up supervisory investigative actions that happen, customary to these investigations, which was to understand were there other players or individuals that were involved in this plotting, or that helped facilitate or played a role in this conspiracy.
If you're able to say, is the investigation ongoing at this point, or is?
At this point, we are satisfied that he is an individual that acted alone. However, there were a number of digital media and other devices and sources of evidence that have not been forensically and fully evaluated, and so we will not close any door.
Thank you. Last question on the task force. Is it an FBI command?
It's FBI led, and we have supervisors that are assigned, and we have a memorandum of agreement that has been approved through the Board of Police Commissioners that go to the operational standards. The men and women of LAPD that are assigned to that task force work for the Los Angeles Police Department. Yep. And their policies, our guidelines, our expectations of them are ours. And if any time there's in conflict with the FBI, the ruling doctrine is the Los Angeles Police Department.
Got it. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Do we have public comments regarding the chief's report?
Yes, sir. We have 7 cards. We have Michael Novick, A. George, and Paula Miner.
Michael Novick.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate there was another police shooting this week. I know you keep using the terminology officer involved, but it's the officer did fire. I'm concerned that the chief never reports on police chases. It seems that every time I watch the evening news, there's been another police chase. I think there was one last night of a motorcycle. Went on for miles at 100 miles an hour. I think those are significant police activities that should be included in these reports. They sometimes do result in deaths and injuries. I do want to comment on this overall situation. I'm wondering whether any of the white supremacist groups that operate in this city and region are classified as gangs under your definition of gangs, because I think that they're a significant source of violence, as has been demonstrated over and over again. This particular individual, apparently what he was planning to attack was a protest rally against a white nationalist group that was having a public event. But overall, I'm concerned about the Joint Terrorist Task Force. I think that the city of Portland decided to withdraw itself, and subsequent to that, there were many disclosures about the involvement of the Portland Police Bureau with organized white supremacist groupings and Patriot Prayer and other factions in the city of Portland, including providing intelligence on anti-racist and anti-fascists to those people. And I think that there's a long-standing record around the country of entrapment activities carried out by these task forces and by the FBI, particularly directed against Muslims, and the man in question in this case recently converted to Islam. So I'm very concerned that FBI and police operatives were involved in providing him with some of the material and encouraging him on that path to violence. I think it promotes a mentality that justifies those operations.
Speaker, please.
Mr.
Hey,
Chairman,
George.
Mr. Chairman, while the next speaker is coming up, if I might just quickly address the pursuit last night was a CHP pursuit. LAPD was not involved. White supremacist gangs do classify as a gang in our tracking and in our recording, and they are subject to investigations as they are involved in criminal activity.
Go ahead.
So the chief hasn't yet reported anything about the termination of Ryan Lee and Martin Robles, who shot and killed Grishario Mack with kill shots that were unanimously found to be out of policy by the police commission. Fire them. I also want to talk about Omar Gonzalez, killed in 2016 by Eden Medina, an LAPD officer, just 12 days before he went on to shoot and kill 14-year-old Jesse Romero, and Kenny Watkins, who was also killed in South LA in 2016 by LAPD. According to a recent article by Los Angeles Times reporter Cindy Chang, after her ride along with Metro cops, on the ground with Metro in South LA, decisions about which drivers are to stop are shaped by years of cops' experience with possible crime indicators. From the man walking up to a parked car to the license plate, to paper license plates sometimes used to hide the car's origins. Despite the mayor's directive, much of the work of Metro's crime suppression squad still revolves around pulling over motorists to root out criminal suspects, illegal guns, and contraband. It was this type of training that caused the death of Kenny Watkins, where the presumption of innocence was lost to preconceptions caused by such possible crime indicators. He'd be alive today if he was white. And if the car he was in, a passenger in, hadn't had tinted windows and paper plates in an area of the city where cops were told at roll call to target such vehicles for stops. The car Omar Gonzalez was a passenger in was originally thought to be stolen, later proven not to be stolen. Officer Medina had reported when questioned that in his training and experience, individuals driving stolen cars are likely to be intending to commit other crimes. Efforts to improve training cannot undo this mindset. Thus, when Omar exited his car and ran, Medina's actions were influenced by this expectation.
Next speaker, please.
The next speaker is Paula Miner, followed by Jamie Garcia.
I just want to comment very quickly on your discussion with Mr. Bonner about identifying crimes related to gangs. We in the community know that when black men of any age are stopped, they're asked if they have tattoos. And one of the ways that you guys decide that they're gang affiliated is if they have a tattoo. So if they've not been involved in gangs for 20 or 30 years but still have a tattoo, they are listed as gang affiliated. So this may affect your identification in the future. But one of the things I wanted to talk about with Chief Moore is about some of the comments that you make in your interviews and when you're going around the community about improving community trust. And that's something that you talk about in here all the time. And I think an example of community trust is not violating it. It was violated in your report to this commission on the shooting of Grishario Mack. The report that's been given to the family and to the community, signed by you, found the shooting in policy. However, the autopsy and information contradicts just about everything that's said in here. So the decision that was made was not the only outcome we seek. But in the case of Grishario Mack, accountability cannot occur until those two officers, Ryan Lee and Martin Robles, are no longer on LAPD.
Jamie Garcia, followed by Hamid Khan and Valerie Rivera.
So when we have these conversations about people that they determine or label as gang members, what doesn't happen is that we don't talk about the solutions and the tactics that they claim will resolve violence in the community. And these solutions and these tactics, they're basically arrest, incarceration, or death. And so when we get to arrest, we think about what is your terminology, or your vision of healing. Your vision of rehabilitation is cages. Cages where people come out not only sicker, but worse. So this is your solution, and it's a failed solution, because if you were actually working, there would be peace in the neighborhoods, right? But you're not working. It's not effective. It's not a solution. So as much as you stand here and try to justify things, we know it's not working. It's a historic solution that stems from racism, settler colonialism, that to this day still enacts those values and still does not do anything to resolve violence. But so I want to kind of go back to this neighborhood policing that you claim that you're doing, because we're on to this precision policing, and we're on to what neighborhood policing means to you. And again, it goes back to how you identify certain people as criminal or not criminal. And we understand the terms of social cohesion and collective efficacy. We understand that in communities that won't participate in your surveys, how you're going to deploy more surveillance equipment to legitimize your presence. And then we know how you're going to use programs like See Something, Say Something that you claim are these anti-terrorist programs that you basically you cultivate a culture of watching, where we're just watching each other and we're terrified of each other, but we know what the impacts of these programs are on the Black community, on the brown community, again, on this criminalization. So I really want to tell you that we're on to this. We're understanding how neighborhood policing and precision policing is going across the nation.
Next speaker, please.
The next speaker is Hamid Khan, followed by Valerie Rivera, Wayne from Encino, and Yvonne Michelle Autry.
Bonner, I think one of the things I would suggest to you is that there was a report that came out from SUNY, the State University of New York, talking about the terrorism cases, and they looked at the whole time span post 9/11 from 2001 till 2014, and they identified 317 out of 580 cases of clear entrapment, and they said as much as 90% of these cases are entrapment or severe issues of mental health conditions, and how undercover they go, and just young people just sitting there bullshitting, because JTTF, the Joint Terrorism Task Force, has to justify its existence, and that's the reason why in Portland and in San Francisco it's been done with. So I would suggest do that. The other piece, I just want to bring it back to the community, this conversation around Nipsey Hussle and the gang piece as well, because, having been around for a while, it's reminiscent of the East Coast, West Coast, Tupac, Biggie, and all of these conflicts that have been going on. So anytime these cultural warriors are stepping up and really, really looking into the community and starting to build power in the community, all of a sudden, next thing you know, there's some conspiracy and somebody loses their life. So we need to really dig into it and see what exactly is going on and what are the forces at work that we need to look at. But I want to go on April 9th, since I was not at the commission meeting the last couple of weeks, and want to bring back quite frankly, the pathetic display of crisis management in motion. The really pathetic display around data-driven policing. Moore, Arcos, Sean Malinowski, and a lot of these folks sitting there and just mumbling their way to the extent that it wasn't even clear that we had to send an email to TFANC to find out that what the fuck actually was said, right? I mean, even the commission was not clear as to what are you all talking about. It was so vague that there was nothing. But one thing that came through very clearly was that people called out, and it was the people's victory. It was a people's victory that Laser dismantled.
Next speaker, please.
The next speaker
Finish up in public comment. Who's the next speaker?
Valerie Rivera.
Thank you.
First off, you guys do realize that you guys are gang related as well, right? Because law enforcement is ultimately the biggest gang, right? So, I mean, who do we go to when we have a complaint against you guys? You know, I haven't been able to come to, well, I've been coming to the last couple of commission meetings in support of Grishario Mack's family, so I haven't been able to come up here and speak. So it's been quite a while since I've been able to be here and speak. And there's a whole lot that I need to say. And I think that these 2 minutes that is on the clock right now for this little 2-minute session isn't going to cover it. So I just want to let you all know that I'm going to come back in my public comment, and I'm going to take my sweet time, and I'm going to express exactly what I need to say and how I feel. And you all are going to sit there and listen to me. So just a fair warning, I'll be back up here to continue on with this conversation. I just don't want to keep people from making their comments because I love to be able to hear what other people have to say, and my time's going to take a little longer. So, yeah.
Next speaker, please.
Wayne from Encino.
Yeah, that's right. So all you private security, get your video cameras out. The lady's going to go insane. So, as you know, Bonner the Blind, you don't know how many LAPD sources the FBI uses to paper over its budget. They're everywhere. We give the FBI local office and the regional office hundreds of cops to go all over Southern California to do search warrants, to do drugs. They just call it task force. Now, what do we get in exchange? Has Jose Huizar been indicted? Has Herb Wesson been indicted? Curran Price? Nuri Martinez? There are 4 council members right now that have the paperwork under seal to be indicted. But if they do it, then the local office loses all of their goodies, and he'll withdraw from all of it. See, so that's the way it works. So do you indict these 4 council members if you're the local FBI field office and give up $7,500 million of assets? Because you see, Washington mails them the money. Whenever you guys give up free shit that I pay for and you pay for out of your taxes, they get that extra money to do other fun shit, like buy an extra helicopter or a plane, or take a trip to Europe for a month, calling it anti-terrorism. See, what they can do is they can go to France right now and call it investigative contacts to see the yellow vests. And it's all perfectly legal. And that's why he wears a suit. You see our police chief? He wears a suit because he's not really a cop. He's a puppet. He's a corporate puppet. That's all this shit is. It's just corporate policing. So you get out in the field. Go on.
Next speaker, please.
Yvonne Michelle Autry, followed by Adam Smith.
The last 2
yes,
speakers.
it's true. This is just a branch of the Illuminati, you know, police, paramilitary, military. It's just like those that maintain the global control. So that's been going on for thousands of years. You are pawns, but you're still responsible because even though many of you probably are microchipped, maybe hypnotized, maybe you're on psych meds as well, God always gives you free moral agency. So you can still choose whether to be a part of this evil fraternal order, which is the Illuminati, okay, or not, at whatever level, whether you're police, Masonic, even the low-level street gangs that attack me. You're all pawns. The only way out is through God, okay, and that's free moral agency. So I hold you responsible because as chief of police, you set a very poor example. You heckled me last month. Like I said, I don't care what I do. I have a right to address you. Okay, heckling me is one step away. This disrespect is one step away from killing her. Oh, she committed suicide. Do you understand? Because it's a disrespect and having no value for life. I'm a human being as a black woman. I'm not a dog. I'm not something for you to access in and out. I just want to make sure you understand that because you set a poor example. And in 1996, police officers approached me in a 24-hour fitness, and I had done nothing. So as a predecessor to these murders, I just want that on a record. A white woman called the police department and said I was disrobing and flashing. Well, I might be sexy, but I'm not that sexy. And I'm straight. I'm heterosexual. So I know that they have test specimens, right, that sometimes, I was a Black Panther Vanguard member, so I know that they've been harassing me for years, but I want that on the record because this extermination and harassment of black people.
Next speaker, please.
Adam Smith.
Next speaker, please. You can come back during public comment. Thank you. Adam Smith.
Chief, I got to say that I think you're being disingenuous about your words. There's absolutely no reason to tweet, and I quote, in the midst of this procession, when talking about a shooting that happened 3 hours after the procession, unless you wanted to infer a connection to the procession and to the outpouring of love and support and community power in the name of Nipsey Hussle. It's insulting to us that come here every week and to the community at large that you say you care about to simply blame it on a misinterpretation of your words. They are your words that you left up there, that are still there, that the rabidly racist Blue Lives Matter crowd glommed onto on your Twitter. It's also disingenuous for you in this commission to talk about the number of homicides and to dissect what's gang-related, gang-affiliated, etc., without adding in the LAPD homicides, like the shooting of Omar Magana in a hospital bed last year, and Grashario Mack in a crowded mall, and Albert Ramon Dorsey naked in the shower at 24-Hour Fitness. You talk about crossfire shootouts that hit innocent 10-year-old kids, but during your chief's report last year when Melita Corrado was shot by LAPD running out of Trader Joe's, and Elizabeth Tollison, who was shot by LAPD in front of a homeless shelter in Van Nuys, we didn't hear all these words. You don't talk about that when the LAPD's doing the crossfire, doing the shooting of the innocent people. We talk about, I bring up training earlier and how much bullshit it is. I was proud to stand with folks a couple weeks ago to interrupt Jackie Lacey's award ceremony at Loyola Law School. And your Rampart division, patrol division from Rampart showed up. And this kid, Alexei Mamashoff, 43098, stood there with his hand on his gun when we're just holding up signs and shit. And he's like, oh, that's just how I stand. Your Sergeant Bonilla, 30211, yelled from his car over the intercom, I'm going to arrest you just to prove a point. And when I went over to get his business card, he jumped up.
Next speaker, please.
We do have one late card, sir. We do have one
Next
late
speaker.
card.
What?
One late card.
No, we'll just take that as public comment. You can use that as the first public comment.
Okay.
Okay, we're in public comment. Go ahead
Public
with that.
comment. We have 15 cards.
Okay.
We'll begin with Carrie Ungerman, Michael Novick, and A. George.
Morning.
I would like a little extra time because earlier today I must have misunderstood when you were asking if we had heard. I thought I had heard you say are there any public comments through H, not after H? So I also actually gave in 2 late cards, and my first card wasn't accepted. So first I want to go to, let's see, one I, J, K, and L. I'm curious why obsolete but original records are destroyed, and they're being destroyed in the Rampart area, West LA, Northeast LA, and Property Division. And what makes a record obsolete, and what are these records? What are they referring to? So I don't know if you can respond or not.
Happy to, if you'll meet with Mrs. Teresa Carter. She's the head of our records and identification, and can share with you the administrative code that governs all that.
So she'll be able to tell me exactly what are in those records?
They'll tell you what the guidelines are for that determines the record to be obsolete and no longer to be retained.
And why aren't we told what the records refer to?
Again, because we need to provide this in a concise manner. You're welcome to talk to Ms. Carter, and she will discuss with you the types of records that are in that group.
Okay, let's move ahead. This is not question of Chief Day.
Actually, that was
this is
okay.
your
Well,
public comment.
whoever answers, it was still part of my question, and I think
Got it. So we'll respond. We'll respond to that.
I just thought it might be. I mean, to know what's in the records that are
can't
being
hear her,
destroyed, since that seems to have been. Okay, well, you know what I'm asking. What's in the records?
Okay.
The other thing that what I also wanted to ask the chief, when in the report, when you're talking about all the total homicides, does that include the shooting victims of police or law enforcement? Like when you're talking about the total amount of homicides in your report?
It doesn't.
No. Oh, it doesn't? Oh, okay.
This isn't question of the Chief Day. I don't know if you knew that.
Next speaker, please. Thank you. Yes, you are finished. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Sir, you took.
The next speaker is Michael
Ask you to
Novick.
stop disrupting the meeting, or we'll just go into closed session. You got a choice.
I also wanted to know if the hit and run includes cyclists.
Okay, thank you.
The next speaker is Michael Novick,
Mr. Novick.
followed by A. George.
Michael Novick.
Every time I come up with a comment, the first thing I say is you should not be meeting inside the police administration building. You should be meeting in the evenings out in the community on a weekly basis, and I object to this meeting once again on that grounds. I do want to say that I missed your meeting last week because I was on the 250-mile 5,500 Elders Committee Spirit Run from Little Tokyo to Manzanar. And I want to let people remember that Manzanar, which was the concentration camp locally for people of Japanese descent, was legal. There was an apology much, much later, but there's a lot of crimes that are carried out by the state under the guise of legality. And in general, the approach of law enforcement is that they uphold the status quo as defined and established. And so police activity that purports not to be racially biased, in fact, is because the system is. And, we say the law in its majesty forbids the rich and poor alike from sleeping under bridges. If you enforce the law against sleeping under bridges, you're going to be targeting certain people in the city. And so I think that you need to get out of these environs and out into the community and let the community speak to you directly on a much broader basis. I guess the other thing I want to say is that the chief is often the most sophisticated person up there. I think that you are very skilled at playing good cop, bad cop with Steve Soberoff. And good cop, bad cop is a game that the cops play. It's a way to break down people's resistance and interrogate them. And so I think that you need to stop.
Next speaker, please.
A. George, followed by Bill Watkins and Gina Viola.
I wonder if Commissioner Bonner is aware about the promise of having 6 community meetings outside these premises and in the evenings a year. I wanted to ask you to consider changing the regular time and place of these meetings. Are you aware that in order for these few people who can come in the first place to come to these meetings. They have to decide between meetings at the same time, City Council, the monthly meeting of the Sheriff's Civilian Oversight Commission, the weekly meetings of the Board of Supervisors, and this meeting, all at the same time. Community members are being split and try, like it's a way of making sure we don't have a voice in very many venues. This meeting should be changed, the regular time and place. I wanted to say that cops will continue to oppress communities of color with unwelcome surveillance under the color of community policing and with the creation of false narratives that allow deadly use of force with impunity, as long as the Police Protective League and the district attorney shield them from any accountability. The PC itself will continue to be a big part of the problem as long as Steve Soboroff remains on the commission. As quoted in a published interview he recently gave to Crosstown Los Angeles, when asked if he sees himself in the PC as more of an oversight body for the department or as part of the department itself, his answer was very revealing and clear. His primary identity is as a cop. When it was pointed out that he uses "we" whenever referring to LAPD policies, use of force statistics, problems with the community, distrust, etc., he was quoted as saying, "The perception of Los Angeles is that we shoot our guns more than 3,000 times a year. Last year, we shot 38 times. We don't shoot guns."
Next speaker, please.
Bill Watkins.
Next speaker. Next speaker, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I appreciate the time and place of this meeting, but I also appreciate the views expressed, and maybe we should go all the above, have more meetings in general. I want to respond. I liked what a guest said, Jamie, about colonialism. And when you're looking at our history and why there's tension and violence, you're all wise to look back and see how we pointed guns at Native people and told them to get lost, and now we're living on their land, and we still have the guns, and we're still controlling. So it's just good to keep that in mind, and I hope we can continue to think and rethink the way we do stuff. Gangs is not a good word to really bring up in some ways. It's just kind of it's really, you should say failure. Whenever you say the word gangs, just say our failure to educate, and our failure to, Chief, I appreciate our recent correspondence, but foot patrol and get out in the communities, get to the rec centers, get to the schools, and I think we can do it. Baltimore Rising is a nice film to watch if you get a chance on HBO about Freddie Gray, rest in peace, and his attorney mentioned in Baltimore before the patrols became automobile patrols, used to be a nice community there, and the police were interacting with people at all times. We need to foot patrol. We need to get rid of the lethal component, maybe get our security officers some walking shoes and get out there and just be a part of the community a little more. For the president, I have a dream for you, and that's to get into non-lethal policing. You could be that guy. Johnson brought de-escalation. You could keep going and get excited. Captain Greg Meyer, I don't know if he's still around, but he was sure passionate about non-lethal force. You can get with him and get into that. The rest of the commission, I also have a dream for you I want to express. Be a part of a LAPD law education team. Get out to schools. The mayor would love to work with you guys on getting out to schools like we used to do with DARE and get out and teach law. God bless you guys. I love you.
As the mother of a child in public school, please get out of schools. I would have to disagree with that man 100%. I will tell you that my child, since I've been coming to these meetings, has been pulled out by school police. Because my child, like yours, Mr. Soboroff, is gay, and he's out about it. And a kid bullied him about it, and who do you think was called to the school police? My son. Not surprising. But that's not what I want to talk about, but that man brought me off my game. Chief, I think it's really irresponsible for you to talk about the life-saving actions the officers took to save one of their own in front of Valerie Rivera. Those officers sat and watched her son die. They didn't do anything to prevent her son from dying. You need to think about that when you talk about stuff in this room. Research shows that increased use of policing and state intervention in everyday problems hasten the demise of the informal, customary relationships that social calm depends on. That's you guys. That's you guys. Policing is making things worse. Yet I read now, you're increasing policing of bridge housing. Increased overtime hours for bridge housing. Criminalizing the houseless yet again to make this situation worse. Give back those monies. Police are not helping that situation at all. Mr. Soboroff, I have waited weeks to talk about that interview that Audrey referenced. I would like to read one of your answers in that interview. I haven't been able to discuss it because there's been so much else going on. They asked you if you saw yourself as an oversight body for the department or as part of the department. Your answer was, we set policy. Yes, we adjudicate. Yes, we're tough. But we are a pro-mission of the LAPD. Yeah, if somebody asks, are you neutral? There's no way. I lean towards cops. I see what they go through. I see what they're up against. It is impossible for you to be oversight.
Thank you.
Impossible.
Next speaker, please.
Jamie Garcia, followed by Adam Smith.
That's your last warning. You can leave. Yeah. Oh, Mrs. Riviera. No, you can say what you want to say, but wait, please wait till you get up there. I give you extra time every time. Mr. Smith, if you open your mouth once more, I'm going to ask you to leave. Mr. Smith. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Ms. Riviera.
So, going back to how LAPD is a failure, and they are something, basically historically have always protected property that was bodies, people. So our job as the community is to really continue to demonstrate the impact of policing, continue to expose what is going on. And unfortunately, our Inspector General doesn't think that impact, civil liberties, human rights is actually something that needs to be reported on. Because going back to April 9th, we had a structural audit that was done. So we had a structural audit of Laser and Predpol. Basically, how were they rolled out? How were they deployed? What were the commanding officers doing? 0 points, being put on a list. But nothing about impact. And that is exactly what this commission is supposed to be concerned about. Obviously, Soboroff doesn't care, but that's exactly what Shane Goldsmith, Mr. Bonner, and Sandra Figueroa, who just doesn't ever pay attention, is supposed to be concerned about. So what happened to the chronic offender bulletin? What happened to the people identified as chronic offenders? What happened when police went to their homes? What happened when they stopped them on the street? Who are they? And why are we not contacting them? Why are we not releasing the list? And we will meet you in court. We will meet you in court on August 29th and demand the release of those bulletins, because now we see that it's an absolute failure. Now we see that you were actually just doing what you wanted, targeting black community members, and we want them released because we want to know what happened. And we demand that you further investigate. Investigate what happened to community members. Who was evicted? Who had abatements put on them through the anchor points? Because we're going after them. And lastly, Leon has left, or maybe he's still here. We need to have another conversation about the PRAs. Because again, I'm having to come here and say, what is going on? We are still waiting. We're past the 14 days. Where is our...
Adam Smith, please.
Next speaker, please.
You're not tweeting anything about the procession, are you, Chief? All right. But going back to the Chief's report, you talked about distracted drivers and distracted pedestrians. One of my biggest, and excuse my eloquent French, one of my biggest fucking pet peeves in everyday observation of your police is their total lack of they refuse to use their blinkers. Seems like such a small thing. That killed Sandra Bland, right? On Wednesday of last week, I was at Temple and Judge John Ieso Street, and I think her stripe said Detective 3 in an unmarked Charger, and she's sitting there texting, and I couldn't help myself. I screamed, "Get off your fucking phone." 2 hours later at the corner of Temple outside the MDC, two of your Explorers with two cops in each one. Neither of them had their blinker on. I said, "You're not going to use their blinker?" And they're just like, "No." And it's that type of like disdain for rules that we see is systemic, from, you know, not using your blinker to shooting a guy in a fucking hospital bed. I had something else to say, but I really get fucking pissed when guys don't use their goddamn blinkers. Like, so that's my, you know, you talked about the community needs to work with you, with the LAPD to, you know, let you know when things are going on. That's me letting you know things are going on all the fucking time. And it's not mundane.
The next speaker, Wayne, followed by Valerie Rivera.
So the good news, your department sent me all of the other videos and other shit now that's all under seal now. You know, you guys, you started 3 years ago with me. You've done it all, man. You paid every judge off. You paid people at the bar off. You paid people in 2 counties off. This nigger is still standing. Why? Why am I standing here? Why ain't I dead? What happened on March the 30th, 2017, man? Well, all of your lawyers, all of your fucking attorneys forgot something that I know. The person who did this to me was not a state employee. He worked for the mayor. And the man has a name. And I know who it is. And you guys never disclosed that to the federal court. You never disclosed it to me. And you think you're so fucking smart. But you see, I found out, and the reason I found out is because somebody snitched it to me, that on March the 30th, 2017, an employee who works directly for Mayor Garcetti set me up to get shot by you. And I have that evidence. This didn't come from the LAPD. See, it comes from people outside the LAPD. And you know what? Your federal friends are tired of your fucking shit. And they're sick of it. Now, they love the free stuff you give them, but it's becoming too expensive. If that bullet would have been placed in my head in that fucking Canoga Park shopping center, what would have happened? You're better off settling the case, right?
Next speaker.
Valerie Rivera, followed by Carrie Ungerman and Lucas Martin.
Next speaker. Next speaker.
Carrie Ungerman.
Stop disturbing the meeting.
Lurch hasn't
Stop
said
disturbing
anything.
the meeting.
Remember Lurch used to interrupt the meeting? You don't say shit today.
Carrie Ungerman, followed by Lucas Martin and Yvonne Michelle Autry.
So one of the things I was saying when I was cut off is I was just wondering about the chief's report about accidents and if any cyclists were involved. And I know I'm not supposed to ask any questions directly to the chief. Let's see. I also want to touch on what Gina said about the commission supposed to be neutral and actually supposed to support. It's someone that the community, that's a body that the community can come to. And I haven't been coming very long, just this year, to the meetings, but I now understand that it's not necessarily the case at all. I don't know if you guys meet in between the meetings, but it's interesting to me that so fast all the consent items are agreed upon and passed. So it makes me think that maybe you do meet and discuss them, because I think some very compelling comments have been made over these last number of months for many of these that would at least cause for pause, at least cause for re-examination before just automatically passing one of these items. I know that they brought up questions for me, and I think Leon's he approached me, so I think after this is over, when you guys go into closed session, he'll answer what makes records obsolete and what is in the records that they would be destroyed. Because it seems to me if they're originals, they should be kept around in case they're needed to be referred to in the future. Thanks.
Lucas Martin, followed by Yvonne Michelle Autry and Lei Tan.
I want to talk about a couple things in my 2 minutes about the divide in this room between the two of us and the lack of respect on both sides. But I think that from the audience, when it comes from us, our outrage is generally necessary. It's a part of democracy that we're allowed to speak up and address you, and you need to hear that as part of it. You, Steve Soboroff, interrupting people, trying to kick people out, calling a phalanx of armed guards to take people out for peaceful protest. This is a part of democracy. That's why you exist. And most of you don't even look up while public speakers come up here. I don't even have your full attention now. But Steve Soboroff especially, you can't keep track of the votes when these things are happening. You haven't been sleeping lately. That's been nice. I've been paying attention to that. But you have in the past. And you've been doing this thing where you turn off the mic just like 1 to 2 seconds before the time is up. That's rude and it's out of policy. It's out of policy, isn't it? Isn't that against the rules? It should be. The other thing I want to touch on is the gangs. Kind of echo what Valerie Rivera said. There are gangs among the police. And I know that not just because there are articles about it, because it's in the news, or because it's an accepted part of history, but I've met with one person from your department who was a part of these police gangs. And he showed me his tattoos, a little triangle, a little dark triangle on the inside of his arm. So I know that it's easy to find them. I know that these tattoos are out there, the flaming skull on the ankle, right? These are things, these are noticeable things. But you choose not to address that as gang violence, even though it is, because those people go out and they inflict harm on our communities. And yet you do these harm reduction reports, and I look forward to the next one about the stickers so officers will use their seatbelts instead of rooting out the gangs that currently infest your own ranks. Thank you.
Yvonne Michelle Autry, followed by Lei Tan, Hamid Khan.
Yes, I'd just like to say Christ is the only way out, okay, for all the levels of Illuminati. At the very top are the Zionist Jewish people. The mafia, you have Catholic priests, oath-taking paramilitary, military, skull and bones. This is a brotherhood. Again, it's been ruling on this level for many years. Now is the time for freedom. Okay, this has nothing to do with color. It has to do with your soul. Okay, but the Zionist Jewish people, they are at the very top. So you know who you are. So you come out, whether you are black Mason, Jewish Zionist, or white supremacist. It's not anti-Semitism because there are black members as well.
Let her talk, will you?
Thank you. There are black members. It has to do with those that sell their souls. Some are sacrificed at birth, and some sell their souls. They take oaths. They sacrifice people. The children, the young men that are innocent, that have been shot by the police officers, women that have been ritualistically raped and then murdered by police officers are sacrifices. It has nothing to do with race. It is the soul. So talk what you know.
Let her talk.
Okay, look, I didn't interrupt you, so don't interrupt me. So, you know, you took my time. So what I was going to say is there's an issue of women, thank you very much for speaking up, of women who have been targeted, men throwing urine on us. My door, you know, men were urinating and masturbating. I was one victim, a Latina was another victim, perpetrated by another Hispanic man, and then there was a black woman, and then another Latina. And these were black men that threw urine on this most recent Latina. So again, this is an effort to curse us with these demons, this is also a ritual, a satanic ritual in persecution of women. Sometimes it precedes a sacrificial femicide or sacrifice of the women. So I wanted to finish my story on 24-hour fitness, but I want...
Next speaker, please. Next speaker.
Lei Tan, followed by Hamid Khan. Jacqueline Richardson.
Good morning.
Okay.
Sorry.
Stop disrupting the meeting. Stop disrupting the meeting. Last warning. She can leave. She has to leave the meeting. Hold on for a sec. Okay, you can leave the meeting now. You're disrupting the meeting. You continue to disrupt the meeting. Don't respond. She's going to leave. Okay, she can leave the meeting. I've asked you to leave the meeting, please. I've asked you to leave the meeting. Okay, thank you. Next speaker, please.
Yeah, good morning, commissioners. I just want to address two issues. I live on Bunker Hill and I work there, and it's been 3 years. And I agree with the gentleman earlier said that I think police should get on their foot, patrol more, because especially after it gets dark. And like I said, I've been living here work here for 3.5 years. I really watch with my own eyes, the safety is becoming an issue on Bunker Hill. And so I really hope that you can send more police to patrol in our area. Like I said, especially after it gets dark. And I was just robbed last week in the supposedly the safest area. And so one thing really bothers me was that it took 4 phone calls, and I waited for about 40 minutes for the police to respond. And when we called 911, and we said, okay, the robber is in the parking garage. If the police had responded within maybe 5 minutes, especially so close to the headquarters here, maybe the robber could have been catched on the spot. So again, I want to recap 2 issues. I want to see more police in our area, and I also want to see when something happens, maybe the police can respond a little bit quicker. And and the last point I want to make is, I really appreciate the police work, to be honest. You guys make me feel safe. But sorry, I don't really know much about. I don't feel I'm qualified to address other issues, but I just want to see
Thank you.
see
I
you
have
prevent.
to hold to the 2-minute limit. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hamid Khan.
Mr.
Jacqueline
Smith?
Richardson.
I think I gave you a last warning, or no? I forgot. I forget stuff.
Hamid Khan, Jacqueline Richardson, and Kevin Taylor.
November 13th last year is when you all passed that budget, and I remember that we were raising some very crucial concerns, and we even reached out to the 2 individuals on data-driven policing, Bonner and Shane, about holding off on approving any budget for data-driven policing. We categorically just, asked you, do not do that because it's going through an audit, because we knew what's going to be coming up. We had exposed the pseudoscience, we had exposed the snake oil, we had exposed the structural harm, we had exposed the inherent racism in these programs, and we thought that Mark Smith, if he had even this much of shame, they would expose it in the audit as well, as the flaws were exposed. And although, going back on Jamie's point, the real harm was never investigated. But going back to that, so now the question is, what about all the funding that was allocated to laser? Because we know there's money beyond the federal grants that you get from the Bureau of Justice Assistance. What about the money that is allocated to Palantir that processes all the systems and all the information and all the data that leads to the creation of chronic offender bulletins? What about the contract with JSS and Craig Uchida, the real snake oil salesperson who sold this program, who operationalized this, who implemented this, who guided this, who did drive-bys in the community, who called community members as tumors, which should be removed with laser-like surgery? What happens to that? So I think the question is that laser may be dismantled, chronic offender bulletins may be dismantled, but it's not done for us. It's not done for us. People have always said to us, why do you go there week after week? Why do you do this week after week? It's because we are here because we come in power. We know this is a flawed system. We know this is flawed by design. We know that the function of police inherently is to cause harm to certain subsets of populations, and we bring it to your attention over and over again. And it's going to happen. The SAR audit is coming out at the end of May.
Next speaker, please. Next speaker. Who do we have?
Jacqueline Richardson.
Richardson. Thank you, sir. Your time's up. We stop disrupting the meeting. It's your last warning. Next speaker.
I've got to get my passport ready. Notify the FBI. It might take a while to get the passport. I have to make an application, type up the papers. I don't know how long that'll be. I'm going to Moscow, Russia, and complain about the way I've been treated. What you see is what they're going to get. I represent no organization, no individual, just myself, nobody else. I have to get my passport. I don't know how long that's going to take. Type the paperwork up. I'm complaining about the things I've seen on my own. I don't represent any organization, no city government, no federal government, just myself. I plan to do that. If they don't like it, that's just too bad because I'm going there. Here I'm complaining about some of the throwaway papers have been complaining, and nobody paid any attention to them, that people have been murdered. They said murdered, but other people say they've been dying in some of these downtown hotels. Someone mentioned the Ambassador, that's on 5th and Spring in front of that bookstore. It's a bookstore over there. Those throwaway papers that they've been dying in downtown hotels. These hotels, some of the hotels where these people have been dying were built before 1978, and they're about 14 stories high. One place they said people were being dying in there. They weren't given, after they died, there was not good sanitation. Some public officials were told about it, but they probably didn't pay any attention to it. These throwaway papers mentioned that. And I don't think too many public officials even read the papers, or they didn't pay any attention when some people complained against them. It may have been happening in other hotels too around in the city. Anyway, that needs to. Well, anyway, they have been.
Next speaker, please.
Kevin Taylor. And the red Chief Hunt.
Spindler, you're disrupting the meeting. Morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning. I don't know how long it's been, Michael Moore. I don't know when your year's up. A lot of people say that you wrecked the train, and this is the second chief that's wrecked the train. I hope to see that you come with the community, sit down with them in a round table, and start working out these issues with real people. I know that you go around a lot of groups and stuff like that, but the people who are here are real people. Number two, so we're off. I'm making a recall to recall you. I think that your time's up down here as the president. The way you're running the meetings is not really I don't see you conducting the meeting as a professional that you're supposed to be. I'm gonna make a recall sheet, and I'm gonna have like 100,000 people sign it and take it to the mayor's office. You have a lot of work, and you haven't done it yet, and correctly addressed the public and the public meetings and things like that. I wish you would improve and things like that. For the rest of you guys, Tiki, you've been here 20 years. This is the same as I have. Yeah, we've been over there in the old police building when Vice President, what's the black dude name was, Urban League, John Mack and stuff like that. We've been here a long time. Sometimes we get too old to be down here and it's time to retire. I'm just saying it straight from my heart. Sometimes, we get old and we want to see different changes and things like that. But, like I said, my word is my word. It's Michael Moore. I'm going to give you fair opportunity for a whole year and stuff like that. And I'm going to see what the changes have been made and things like that. And a lot of people think that you wrecked the train, but I'm not going to be the decision maker. I'm going to let the public do it. Thank you. My name is Red Chief Hunt.
Valerie Rivera.
All right. I really hope that you all really listen to me. I'm begging y'all to really listen to me and really take in what I have to say, because it's really, really important that you guys understand that this department is doing so wrong by allowing the 2 cops that killed my son to continue to get away with murder and continue to carry a badge and a gun. Now, first off, I want you all to know that I have been to my deposition. I've been to the officers' depositions. I've actually have been able to sit there and sit right in front of them and listen to what they have to say that night. And I still can't believe it's different. It's different for me now, because before I heard from the horse's mouth, I was left with these bullshit ass reports that you guys make, which is all lies, which is all negative and making it out to be where my son was a horrible person, and that it was his action that took his life. You guys do not put anywhere in any reports about those fatal mistakes those officers made. Those mistakes. And let me tell you something, man. It wasn't no 1 mistake, 2 mistake, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 mistakes. It was way more than that. And for this department to sit there and completely ignore these facts is disgusting, is extremely terrifying. I don't understand how you guys could sit there and protect these 2 officers. For what? For what? I don't get it. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start back to the very beginning, because obviously you guys don't get it yet. All right? Now, when they got that dispatch call, first of all, those officers barely met that night. That night they killed my son was the first time they ever met, was the first time they ever patrolled together. Second, when they got that call and they were taking that drive to go find this 40-year-old, let's remind you, it was a call about a 40-year-old man, not a 20-year-old man. So they could have sat there and made identified my son, wrongfully identified my son. They were supposed to be looking for a 40-year-old man. When they're looking, not one word was spoken between the 2. Not one word. I've seen the body cam footages. Unfortunately, there was no dash cam, supposedly. I don't know if there is, because the system is so fucking corrupt. You guys could have easily have just tossed it away. But I would never know that. I do know that I seen the body cam footages. I do know that they didn't speak not one word together. And I would think that, you know what, when an officer is being called to a incident with a man with a gun, these officers should be communicating with each other. They should be sitting there and at least talking about what they plan on doing when they come up to this situation or something. Not one word. I think that's a huge mistake. Now, when they spot Eric, they totally didn't even see the eyewitness that was walking right behind Eric. That was only 20, 30 feet behind Eric. Yet, they stop Eric instead of the other person because they never seen him, which means that they were very negligent, which means that they could have harmed that innocent person also that was walking behind Eric because they failed to put a car in park. When they seen Eric and they flipped around, they both jump out. In a matter of 7 seconds, they shoot my son down with 7 bullets, with 1 fatal shot to the head. Those 6 other bullets were not life-threatening. That means that if that officer, which was the passenger, who also is a military man, is the one that gave my son that headshot, my son could have probably possibly survived that. But they wanted to make sure that he was killed. Now, if that's not bad enough, the driver fails to put the car in park. Common sense, man, common sense. And I'm sorry, you guys want to sit there and talk about training. Oh, we need more training. That's just a bullshit reason to get more fucking money from us. And I'll be damned if another dime comes to you guys for fucking training, because that money should be on the training already. And I'm not talking about bullshit training. I'm talking about proper training. Proper training. The right way, which, I mean, come on, I think, making sure a police officer always puts that car in park should be something that is very important to train them. Because I know Eric's case isn't the only case where an officer has failed to put a car in park. The passenger cop, after he finishes letting off all his fucking bullets on my son, trips, falls, scrapes his elbow, jumps back up, starts whining about he doesn't know if he's shot. How can a person not know when they're shot? Compared to a scrape on an elbow that they've done to themselves. It doesn't make any sense. He realizes the car is still in drive, yells to his partner, "Oh shit, the car." Just jump back in and step on the brake. Driver starts catching up to the car, gets in halfway. By that time, the car is already at the point where my son's dead on the cement, on the sidewalk. Halfway gets into the car, and instead of stepping on the brake, steps on the gas. Wow. Launching the car completely over on top of my son's body. If it wasn't for that gate stopping it, it would have crushed my son's head because he literally launched the car. Thank God that gate was there and did not crush my baby's head, because I wouldn't. That right there would really fuck me up. All this is fucking me up, but that part right there would. God knows I wouldn't have been able to handle that part. Really. So you guys are lucky on that part, because I would have lost my fucking mind. That is so fucking fucked up of them officers to do to my son. Now, not only did he do all that, he gets out. By that time, the second car is already pulling up. Passenger, the one that's whining like a fucking baby, goes behind the second patrol car. His partner, the driver, says, I'm gonna pull the car off. I'm gonna pull the car back. He actually thought about pulling that car off of my son. He actually thought that he was he wanted to render aid, but it was too late for my son. But still, who knows? He didn't know my son was dead or not. He could have rendered aid, but he chose not to. He chose to walk away and leave that car on my son for 12 hours causing excessive burn marks on my son's chest because of that. And 3 hours of that was him exposed. That's dirty of y'all. That is so fucking dirty of y'all. How dare this department do that to my son, to any human being? How dare they do that? You disrespected him. You disrespected the community. You disrespected me and his family. You guys are disgusting. And you guys sit here and say it's all justified? Where? Where? I also want you guys to know that I also have seen the video that you guys really just fucking love and enjoy having. And you guys are really, I mean, the most wickedest, most evilest. I'm not even gonna call you human beings because you guys aren't human. When I went to my deposition, during my time up, the city attorney of LAPD of the cops decided to pull up the video of Eric that they caught with Eric having, you know, an episode, and two officers had approached him. And, you know, at first my son was very, you know, angry, very upset. He was just going through it. He was having a hard time at that time. I didn't know this. I didn't know that that was going on with my son at the time. If I did, you know, I would have, you know, done everything in my power to make sure my baby was, you know, not going through what he was going through. But my son was 20 years old. You know, he wanted to live his life the way he should have. And in this video, I couldn't even believe that you guys would even bring this up at my deposition. I was aware of this video beforehand. My lawyer did tell me that he had recently gotten a video that you guys had handed over to him. He told me that it was pretty, you know, heartbreaking. And, you know, he recommended me that, you know, maybe I wouldn't want to see it. And I said, okay, then I don't want to see it. I'm actually really glad now that I did. I really am, because you guys are showing your fucking cards to me, and I'm gonna play my cards a whole lot better, and I'm gonna win your asses. I'm gonna beat your asses, because you guys are gonna sit here and try to portray my son as having, you know, some sort of mental issues and you know, being erratic and stuff like that. But in that video, let me tell you all something. And I would like to know the officers' names that actually approached my son that day. I really do. I don't know their names yet, but I would actually really appreciate getting their names, because I think that they deserve some kind of recognition for the way they handled my son that day. And I wish to God that those other two officers that approached my son that night when they killed him were just like those other two officers that handled my son previously. And the reason why I say that is because when they seen Eric, Eric was clearly upset in that video. And I want you all to understand that my baby was just crying out for help. And if you guys can't see that in that video, then there's something wrong with y'all. He was crying out for help. He was tired. And, you know, it was really hard for me to talk about this video, even think about it, because it fucking tore me up. It tore me up to see, first of all, that you guys want to try to portray my son as somebody else, you know, and you guys don't even know him. You guys don't know who he is. And also to see these officers actually do a decent job, the job that they were supposed to do, and then turn around and have my kid get killed by two very negligent officers a week later. Now in that video, and he was only acting he was only acting upset for a couple of seconds. The officers pull up and they say, hey buddy, are you okay? What's going on? What's going on? They de-escalated the situation really quickly. They de-escalated, and let me tell you something. My son immediately calmed the fuck down. Calmed the fuck down, and he broke down crying. He broke down crying. And they were like, well, where do you live? What's going on? And he was just saying he was tired. And he was hungry. And that, he was living in a tent, a tent city, and that sometimes, and I didn't even know about this with my baby. But you all wanted to make sure that I seen that shit, didn't you? And they turned around and they said, they took Eric. Eric calmed down. He was just begging for help. And they took Eric to go get help. And then they released him. And then a week later, he gets killed. And you guys allow this shit to happen? I have been through so much because of you guys. But because of this department, you guys put something in me. You all gave me strength. You all gave me power. You guys are powerless when it comes to me. You guys have no power. You guys have no idea how much you all are going to fucking fail with what you all are doing. Because I'm not just holding those cops accountable, I'm holding all you motherfuckers accountable. Jackie Lacey. Charlie Beck thinks that because he ain't got nothing to do with it, he's not gonna be held accountable. But bullshit. Once everything's gonna come into place. Everything's gonna come into place. Chief Moore, when I first met you, I asked you about that meeting. You talk about, wanting to build trust, wanting to build, communication, transparency, and all this bullshit. Yet you can't meet with me. You want to come back and tell me, oh, well, you've been trying to get a hold of my lawyer and no response back and blah, blah, blah. And I called you out on that bullshit. Because I know you spoke to my lawyer, or the city attorney spoke to my lawyer to get approved on that. And if I didn't know that, then how did I know my lawyer even mentioned it? Because my lawyer told me you guys got a hold of him and he approved it. It just speaks on your character, because it's funny how you claim that you guys can't get a hold of my lawyer for something like that, but you're easily able to get a hold of my lawyer when it came to me mentioning the $50,000 that you guys tried to settle with me. I threw that out there. And you bit. You fucking bit. And I'm glad you did, because it just speaks about who you are and what kind of character you have. And just so you know, and my lawyer called me up again, because me and my lawyer do have a really good relationship. He stands by me 100% with everything that I do. And told me about how you guys are griping about me mentioning something that was confidential. And I bet it was, a surprise to you to find out that I never signed any confidential paperwork for that. And let me tell you, that was a godsend. God did that for me. God allowed that paperwork not to be presented for me to sign that day, to show how fucked up y'all are. I would have much rather have you guys came and said, you know what, we don't want to give you nothing. Nothing. $50,000, really? It's not about the fucking money. Because let me tell you something. When I filed that lawsuit, there was an option. We given Jackie Lacey an option. We would drop the civil rights lawsuit if she held those officers accountable and prosecuted them. That's what we wanted. That would have given us at least some sort of justice, and not full justice, because justice would be my baby still here. But something. But this department, this isn't a difficult fucking case here. It's clear as day. It's not difficult. Now, you all just didn't either bother to read it. Well, see, the problem is that the report is all based on your guys' perspective, and it's always going to be about how bad the other person is. And so that means there's no truth in those reports. Now, that report that Charlie Beck filed right there and filled out and signed Charlie Beck, approved by Charlie Beck to allow these murder cops to still work, gets handed down to you guys. And now you guys are really stupid if you guys don't question these reports. If you guys really believe, oh, well, you know, everything here is, you know, this person is just, yeah, this person definitely asked for to be killed. That is just ignorant of you guys. To not be able to read between the lines or to be able to sit there and say, wait, hold up, wait a minute, hold up. Wait, this cop didn't put the car in park? Hold up, wait, he steps on the gas instead of the brake? You know, like, how can you guys not question these things? I've been, because of you guys, I have now become very adamant on making sure that we make some laws for us, because time's up for you guys and being protected. No more protecting you guys anymore. We're here to protect ourselves because we can't trust in you guys. We cannot trust and we cannot believe and have faith in you guys. I tried. You know how hard it is to lose a child and to have to come in here and try to humble myself, try to sit there and come at you guys, you know, in a certain way, just in case, you know. We all know y'all are a bunch of little sensitive ass pussies. Speaking of Chief Moore, if you know, I would have much appreciated you being honest with me and saying, "Hey, you know what? I just don't want to have that meeting with you." You know, I would have respected you more. I would have respected you. You know, I mean, I get it. You know, you don't want to have that type of meeting. I mean, you should. But I get it. You're a coward. I get it, you know? But I just think, you know, if you're going to sit here and you're going to take that position and you're going to go mega dipping into the community's money to sit in that position, because let's not forget those millions of dollars that you received. Let's not forget that it was all planned for Charlie Beck and Eric Garcetti to make sure you get extra money and to make sure you get that seat to continue on the dirt that Charlie Beck left behind. And every time you speak, it's like it fucking hurts my ears, because I know everything that you say is so not true. Everything you say is so fake. Y'all are fake. We're the real people here. We're the real ones. We're the ones that actually got the balls to stand up for righteousness. We're the ones that are actually got the balls to go up against the biggest, fucking deadliest police department. I have no fear at all when it comes to you guys now, because you guys took away something so fucking valuable and so important to me. And because of that, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to tarnish all your guys' names. I'm going to make sure I put all you guys out there. You guys want to sit there and make all these reports? LAPD, oh my God. This critical incident reports that you guys put on your fucking YouTube page. You guys need to stop that shit. That shit should not be on no fucking YouTube channel. Okay? These are people's lives being taken away. These are families that got to sit there and see this shit. And you guys have no fucking remorse. You guys don't even think about us. I bet not 1 second you guys think about me or Eric and my family. And all these other families that come in here week after week, pouring their hearts out. You guys are all going to go to hell. Really. And I just want to say again that you guys are going up against the biggest, most powerfulest being of all, and that's God. I don't know how much you guys believe in all that. I doubt you guys do, because you guys are all cold, heartless people with no conscience. But God's at work. I have no doubt in my mind that Eric will get his justice. And you know why? Because of me. That's right. Because of my community that has my back. That's right. Not because of you guys where it should have been. I shouldn't have to be in here doing this stuff. You know, it was so simple. All I was asking for was prosecution of them cops. Make sure they can no longer ever be a police officer again. Ruin their lives. Hold them accountable. Not even one little accountability with that car being left in drive has happened. How can you guys be like that? 1421 came in to effect January 1st. I was a big part of that, just so y'all know. We're making moves here. I hope you all are prepared, because the shit's gonna be coming down. You guys can't sit there and hide anymore. And the secrecy is no longer gonna be secret anymore. Once I finally get the body cam footages, dash cam footages, all that stuff in my possession, I cannot wait for that, because then I'll be able to really put my side, put them officers and this department even more on blast with what really happened, instead of people interpreting the things that you guys want to sit there and put out there as. And once you see that video, it's clear. I can't even believe you guys seen the video and still felt like those officers did no wrong. I really cannot believe that. Is something over there really important, Steve Soboroff, that I should know about?
Yeah, go ahead.
We're also going to make sure that we get this AB 392 law to come into effect, so no other lives be taken away again. Unfortunately, it wasn't in effect, before my son got killed, and if it was, maybe that might have saved my son's life. But it's going to be able to save a lot more lives once that law comes into effect, because you guys are going to be held accountable. And I just want to say, fuck you all. You guys have never done me any favor. You guys are a fucking disgrace. I also want to say, oh, where's he at? He's not here, huh? Oh, yes, he is. There he is. What's your name, sir? The liaison guy? Wilkins. Wilkins? I also want to sit here, and I have something to say to you, too. Maybe about a month and a half back, I think you might remember when I walked out that door and you were standing right there talking to one of my good friends, and I had to go use the restroom. Do you remember that day?
If you want to talk to Mr. Wilkins privately, why don't you go ahead and do that?
No, I don't, because you know what? You know why? Because he was so unprofessional.
Okay.
And I'm going to call him out on it.
Okay.
So, do you remember that day?
No, so this is...
Sir?
Miss?
Sir?
Miss?
Sir?
Ma'am?
Sir?
Mr. President, I would ask
Okay.
that to either address this group.
Okay.
Or Sergeant Wilkins, please go ahead and excuse from the room. Our staff and here is not here to address your public session. We're happy to meet with you after.
Thank you.
Yeah, run, little fucking coward.
Okay, do you want to go ahead? Because I'm going to ask you to wrap up now, please.
No, so let me tell you, I'm still going to fucking say it. All right? I'm still going to say it. So he was out there talking to a very good
Will you
friend
start
of
the
mine.
2-minute clock? And it's going to be the last 2 minutes.
Talking to a good friend of mine. And my friend starts talking to him about the policy. Well, how could it be in policy about what happened to Eric? He turns around and tells my friend, oh, well, if you would have seen the video that we have on Eric before that happened, then maybe you might have a different opinion on it. How fucking dare he sit there and be so unprofessional as to sit there and tell somebody something like that? How dare he? He should be held accountable for that shit.
They went hunting for air.
That is fucked up. I would have never knew that if it wasn't for my friend coming to tell me what he said.
That's your stuff, Norm.
Now he wants to sit there and say, once families get to meet me and get to know me, they all end up liking me. Well, guess what? I don't fucking like him. I don't like him at all for how he acted, how unprofessional he was to sit there and say of a person that has been killed wrongfully, to top it off, and horribly, that, oh, well, if you would have seen the video of Eric before, you might change your mind on it. You might have a different opinion on it. This department's disgusting. And I will continue to expose this department. I will continue to speak my son's truth. I will continue to fight with everything that I got. And I really hope you guys lose a lot of sleep over this. I really hope you guys have no appetite. I really hope you guys, live an unhappy life, which I know you guys are because you guys are all miserable people. You have no heart. So, yeah, I'm fed up. I'm fed up with this. And you guys could still do something, but you guys are going to choose not to. You could sit there and say, okay, you know what? Let me pull up the report again. Hold on. Let me do something about this.
Okay, next speaker, please.
We have no other speakers on this item. We're now on closed session items, sir. We have
Okay, so
7
we're-
cards for closed session item 4A1.
Okay.
The first 3, Jeffrey Delshar.
Go ahead, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you.
First 3 speakers, Jeffrey Delshar, Michael Novick, and Gina Viola.
We have speakers on
On
A2 also.
1 card on 2.
Okay. This is 4A1.
4A1.
Mike, is there a mic? Oh, hi. I meant to put it on public comment, but I put 4 because usually the last couple of weeks has been 4, the number 4. It's not on the.
So you're not going to talk on.
Well, I meant my
4A1?
intention was to talk in public
I understand.
comment. Yeah, is that a problem? Or?
Yeah. Okay, next speaker, please.
That's a problem.
You can talk about 4A1. Next speaker, please.
Michael Novick.
Mr. Novick. Next speaker.
So 4A1 is an officer-involved shooting. The police shot a man in a hospital bed, Mr. Magana. I think that Valerie Rivera referred to the new bill that's going through the legislature that would change the standard, but even under the old standard of a reasonable fear that a reasonable officer might have, there's no way that a man in a hospital bed presents a reasonable threat requiring that officers shoot him. So I think that you need to begin to look. You have 2 cases again today. They involve, I think, 2 officers in this one, and there are a couple of sergeants and several more officers in the next one. I realize not every one of those officers fired their weapon, but you're looking at something that's systemic. You have to treat it systemically. You have to understand that there's a problem. It's a grave, grave problem. And I think that you called this meeting today and you thought you'd have wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, go home about 2 hours ago because you put most of the agenda either in the consent calendar or the closed session. But I think we, tried to draw out to you that you're derelict in your duty. Week by week, over and over again, you find cases in policy that are killings. And you need to hold these officers accountable. You need to create policies that will prevent further killings. And if you can't do that, then turn the job over to somebody who can. And so I think that the fact that this is someone, presumably Mexicano or Central American, Mesoamerican, reflects the fact that police shootings in general in the city reflect the racial bias of policing that's systemic, and that it has to be dealt with in a systemic fashion. So I urge you to find this shooting out of policy, and I urge you to go back and review all the others.
Gina Viola, followed by Jamie Garcia and Wayne.
I wanted to get up and ask you how bad the police must be at their job that an unarmed man in the hospital has to die. And I wanted to follow it up with other names. Albert Ramon Dorsey, naked, in a shower, he had to die. Jesse Romero, running away, unarmed, died. Keith Bursey, unarmed, died. Eric Rivera, unarmed, murdered. And I keep coming back to how bad are police at their job, that this is the end result when they come up against unarmed people. And I can't help but keep thinking, what if all of these names I just read to you were white people? If all of these names I just read to you were white people, would the outcomes be different? And you know they would. Mama Paula corrects me all the time. I say, what if A.J. Weber were my son? She says, it would never be your son. And she's right. Black and brown lives matter. They matter. You have an opportunity to show people that they matter by finding these things out of policy. Yet you don't. And Valerie just said everything I could never say. Thank you for sharing what you did, Valerie. I know how hard that was. I don't know how hard that was, but I can only imagine how hard that was. Sorry. Yeah, out of policy. Find this one out of policy. Start doing your jobs. And if you can't, it's like Michael Novick said, you are derelict in your duties. You have been year after year. Step aside and let a real oversight board sit here.
Jamie Garcia, followed by Wayne.
So I'm a nurse at White Memorial. And this is where the shooting happened. And for the record, I don't speak for White Memorial. I speak for myself. And I just want it to be known that, you know, this work of resisting police violence, you know, is so vital. And really, sometimes I think, like, will this put me at risk? Will this put my job at risk? Will the work of resistance and this loudness and this disdain, resistance, you know, what can happen? Because we have a history of people who resist and, you know, they lose things, right? But being a nurse and the oath I took as a nurse, which I see many people in healthcare fields forget what it means to want to heal people. And the reason why I bring this up is because their solutions about healing, their solutions about intervention are all about harm. They're all about evicting us from our homes, from evicting us from our apartment complexes, murdering us, arresting us, or putting us in cages that make us more sick. That's what they're about. There is no other way to sugarcoat it. But not us, not me. I'm here because I resist, because I will not just deem my community as gang members, as worthy of murderers or cages, because that's not what's going on. Violence has interventions that don't have to be more violence, that don't have to be cages. Mental health, poverty, homelessness, green spaces, food, medication, those are the things that make us well. Those are the things that bring us peace. He was unarmed. He was in a hospital.
Next speaker, please.
It's not okay. You are not the solution. You will never be the solution.
Who's next?
The next speaker is Wayne,
Spindler.
followed by Zach
Thank you.
Sherwin. Zach Sherwin and Clint Blakely.
We're good. It's cathartic. It's good. Therapy, this is what it's about. I'll take that call in a second. Now we're shooting people in a bed in a hospital. Well, you know, what we call that is hunting. So were you hunting wabbits, you fucking assholes? Is that what you were doing? What happened here? This is the work of assholes. It's an asshole with a fucking badge. And without that badge, he's a bitch and a half. Fuck the police. That's all the fuck this is. If I were the head of this department, I would take a fucking chartered plane and I'd drop this motherfucker into Santa Monica Bay, this fucking cop. That's what I'd do to this fucking cocksucker, okay? This is a fucking assassin and probably partially retarded, and he probably was hired because he knew somebody in the department. Hey, you know what? What? We got an opening. We can get you in the academy. I'll give you a reference letter. Oh, okay. And there's your retard. You shoot them in a fucking hospital where they get federal funding. All these hospitals get federal funding, so the FBI's got jurisdiction immediately over the whole fucking thing. You're not thinking. Let's do it the old way. You go out to the desert, you dig the hole first, get off the I-15. Then you put them in the hole and shoot them. And then you bury them. That's the way Steve made his money. That's the way my father made his money. That's the way my uncle made his fucking money. And you walk around here like, look at him talk. Yes. I changed my fucking life around. I went fucking straight. You brought me back here to look at this shit, watching a guy assassinate another man in a hospital bed. You find this motherfucker in compliance, I don't know what's going to happen.
Next speaker, please.
Zach Sherwin.
Sherwin.
So I actually also intended to speak during public comment and put down the wrong number, but I'll find something to say about this as well. I don't think I'm going to say anything new that previous speakers haven't said, but I want to be another person who's going to use however many seconds to force you to look at a person who is saying that just the sheer set of facts that are being talked about in the matter that is before us right now, it is incontrovertible that somebody got killed when they were in a hospital room, unarmed, by someone who was armed. How can that possibly be the case, that is going to be the story that we hear in this room, and you're going to go in that room into that closed session and vote that what that person did was in accordance with the way that their job should be? That is deeply negligent, and I hope that each of you is actually listening to the words that I'm saying and just looking inside yourself to find that kind of basic humanity to fulfill the oversight function that you're here to fulfill. I think it's deeply dismaying and troubling that I have absolutely no expectation that you're going to do something that is in accordance with common sense values. The power disparity between the officer in that room and the person who they killed is as vast as the power disparity between you sitting behind that dais and saying to people who are obviously suffering from mental health issues, get out of this room. I've asked you to leave again and again while a phalanx of officers descends on them. The gulf between the officers and the person that they killed is unbridgeable, and I hope that you do the right thing here. I'm glad I used this minute and a half to speak up here and stand up here, and I'm glad that you consent to listen to the remarks of somebody like Valerie Rivera, who has so much to say to you about the injustice that this police department has committed. And I hope that you'll do the right thing here. You want to build community trust. Listen to the members of the community and what they're telling you.
Clint Blakely.
Look, I feel the same way that echo the feelings that Zach just said. I wish there was something I could bring up about this shooting of Omar Magana that was new, that would make you see it in a different way, but it's just so simple. This man, there were two officers, as listed in the agenda right here, two officers, one man suffering a medical emergency in a hospital, unarmed, and the event ended in the killing of him. There's no possible way in my mind that I could justify a situation in which this killing should be in policy. This should not be in policy. You should rule that when you go into closed session, and the two officers should be removed from LAPD entirely. Also, this may seem like a small point, but I do think it's very important, just out of respect to the dead. If the Boyle Heights Beat article that details this killing is correct, there should be a tilde over the N in Magania's name, just out of respect to the dead. I think that's very important that you misspelled his name in this agenda here.
We have no other cards on 4A1. We have 2 cards on 4A2. We have Michael Novick and Wayne.
Yeah, this is one of the cases where apparently the person who was shot is of European descent. By the name, I assume he's Armenian. And last week was the anniversary of Armenian genocide. I think it's not coincidental that very often the so-called white victims of the LAPD are Armenian. It's 2 or 3 times that's happened. There was a case just a couple of months ago. I do want to point out the problem with your agenda over and over again this week in particular. You have the wrong date on the agenda. It says the 23rd. You disguise the content of many of the items. And a couple of weeks ago, you had when the data-driven policing was brought up, you had, I think it was section 2, and it was 2A1,
Do this
2A2.
privately. This is not on topic.
It's on the topic of the agenda item, which is 4A. Excuse me, it's on the top.
Next speaker.
We have Wayne.
Spindler. Got it. But we're not on topic. Thank you. We got it. Got it. Okay, Mr. Spindler, last speaker.
Yeah, this.
We want to hear Mr. Spindler.
Yes. So we have the Armenian genocide on A4A2, Alpanian. Now, see what's going to happen, Mr. Bonner. And as soon as Eileen Decker, because see what Eileen Decker does now, she hides from the
Mr. President,
meeting.
he's off topic.
Wait a minute, scumbag.
Off topic.
I'm talking about who the quorum is going to be to decide this. Stop fucking interrupting the meeting.
We're going into closed session, please. Your time's over, Mr. Spindler.
The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss item number 4A1 and 4A2 in accordance with Government Code 54957. The Board of Police Commissioners has concluded its work in closed session. We are back in open session. In closed session, item number 4A1 was discussed, and the Chief's recommendations were unanimously adopted. In closed session, item number 5A2 was discussed, and the Chief's recommendations were unanimously adopted. Mr. President, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second? Second. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you, everybody.